Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, November the 28th, 2024. Today I want to talk a little bit more about Neptune. So a couple of days back I considered what it might mean for Neptune to be in Pisces, and I want to return to that theme, perhaps in a more sort of chaotic and rambling sense, but I do think I've got something more to say. I haven't really prepared very much. I'm not exactly too sure what I'm going to say, but I do think it is something that I need to talk about. But before I talk about Neptune in Pisces and what it might mean, and give you some further insights, or at least I hope they're insights. I hope they're not just my incoherent ramblings, but anyway, we'll see what happens. So anyway, let's look at what's happening today, which is Thursday, November the 28th. And of course it is Thanksgiving, so if you're in the United States, I suppose I have to say Happy Thanksgiving. Of course, people talk about turkeys. I mean, I'm a vegetarian and it doesn't really mean a great deal to me. Okay, so before I look at the positions of the planets for today, usual reminder, if you enjoy the video, I'd be very grateful if you were to indicate that you liked it. If you enjoy the video and you're not subscribed, I'd be really, really happy if you were to subscribe. Anyway, so let's look at what is happening today. So here's the positions of the planets right now, at least on Thursday at noon in New York, and you can see that the moon is in Scorpio, so very much a moon in Scorpio day. So with the moon in Scorpio, that of course indicates that there might be a certain emphasis on emotions. Maybe, perhaps we're going to be more emotional than usual. The moon is in early Scorpio. That's perhaps the more difficult part of the sign Scorpio. The moon is in the Via Combustor. Remember, Via Combustor is that part of the sky between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio. So, things can just happen, and, emotions, as I said, will be strong, and emotions might not always be useful. With moon in Scorpio, there can be something rather brooding about it, and we might be keeping things to ourselves. We might have strong feelings, but just because we've got strong feelings doesn't mean that's necessarily a good thing, particularly if we are holding them back. So there might be resentments sort of simmering away. Maybe not our resentments, but perhaps other people have their resentments. And I suppose, holidays can always be dangerous times, often be dangerous times. Things can boil over in all senses of the word, the literal sense, metaphorical sense, however you want to see it. Things can boil over. And with moon in Scorpio and today being Thanksgiving, things really can boil over. And, this might be the time when resentments really come to the fore. So perhaps we need to be a little bit careful of that moon in Scorpio, though, we shouldn't get too worked up about it. I mean, the moon always has to be in one sign or another, and just because the moon is fallen in Scorpio doesn't necessarily mean that it is the end of the world. I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world. So as far as what the moon does in Scorpio, well, the moon makes a square to Pluto, and it makes an opposition to Mars. So we have been having this Mars-Pluto opposition, so that is the stage we're in. Mars is opposition Pluto, and so with Mars opposition Pluto, there can be issues of power. We are aware of how much power we have, what power we don't have, and perhaps we might be feeling resentment, and we might be aware that some people appear to have more control and power than we do, and that might be very somewhat irritating. And so you've got Mars opposition Pluto, then you've got the moon squaring Mars, squaring Pluto, bringing that whole thing together. And so you could say that there's a T-square in fixed signs, so people might find it quite difficult to compromise. Though on the plus side, the moon having made the square to Mars and Pluto, it does move on to make a trine to Saturn, and maybe that sign to Saturn is going to sort of provide some relief. It might be about sort of control and structure. So we have strong feelings, but maybe there is a way of structuring them. So that's the position in New York, noon New York, and so the moon is at sort of 8 degrees Scorpio at noon in New York. If we go to Sydney, Australia, it's a slightly different picture, because at noon, Sydney, Australia, the moon is at 0 degrees 20 minutes Scorpio. So if you are in Australia and New Zealand, then you might find that the first part of the day is somewhat different from the last part. First half, the moon could be in Libra, depending precisely where you are, but there's more of a moon in Libra feel to the first half of the day. Then second half of the day, moon moves into Scorpio, and perhaps things start to get more complicated. And turning to the heliocentric picture, so heliocentrically we have, there's a heliocentric picture here. I suppose the main aspect is a conjunction between Venus and Neptune. Heliocentrically, remember, not geocentrically. So with a Venus-Neptune conjunction, it is potentially about relationships, about how we relate to people, perhaps about the boundaries between us and others. And with Venus conjunct Neptune, those boundaries may be somewhat porous, and we may emotionally take it to heart what people are doing and what people are saying. And the nature of relationships may at times be somewhat complicated. We may not be absolutely sure what's going on, and I suppose it's possible that we reach the wrong conclusions. Now, there is a midpoint aspect which is perhaps quite important, and if you look at the heliocentric picture, you see Neptune is at 28 Pisces, and it is on the midpoint of Uranus and Pluto. So Uranus is on the Neptune-Pluto midpoint, and that is quite a long-lasting configuration. It's not just about today. So Neptune on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. Uranus-Pluto is about, I suppose, wanting perhaps to overthrow something, feeling that things have to change. But Neptune on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint, there may be a little bit of confusion about how we bring this change into being, and the whole concept of change, dramatic change, may be worrying, maybe somewhat undermining. So Venus conjuncting Neptune means that Venus is also on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. So Venus arguably is acting as a trigger. It's triggering this whole configuration with Neptune on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. And so it may be a day when we feel that, really something does need to be overthrown, and we're not happy with the status quo. And it may not just be about us as individuals. It could be quite a collective aspect, and so it may just be about the world in which we are living. Remember, this is a heliocentric chart, and when you're dealing with a heliocentric chart, it tends to be more impersonal than a geocentric chart. So now, having looked at that, I think you perhaps notice that there isn't actually a lot going on today. I mean, we have had a few days when there isn't much going on. Today, really, there is not much to report. Moon is going into Scorpio. Moon is square Mars, square Pluto. There is perhaps Moon trine Saturn. So not a lot going on. And I'm really, really thinking that my reports of the 12 signs are going to be briefer than usual. Anyway, let me do my forecasts for the 12 signs. These are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, November the 28th, 2024. Aries. Aries, it may feel that things are getting a little bit complicated. Perhaps that you might be aware of things going on under the surface which you don't entirely understand. You kind of know you have to take note of them, but you'd rather not. And at the same time, you feel that a lot of other people are just making things complicated. They're making things more complicated than they actually should be. And this is not the way you'd like things to work out. I mean, you are an Aries. You are assertive. You like things to be completely straightforward. You don't like people playing games, but that's not the way it is. And I think that you do have to take things slowly and not jump to conclusions, and also not get angry. I mean, I think that there are reasons for Aries to get angry today. And the reason you might get angry is because you feel that you're just unable to get your teeth into things because other people are playing games and things perhaps need to be brought to the surface. And if something is not revealed, you're almost going to want to demand that it is expressed and talked about, and that might make you impatient. And so Aries, I think that impatience is probably not a good emotion to have right now. I think that you need to sort of understand that people have their own feelings, that their feelings are powerful, that they're perhaps not ready to reveal everything. And I think, Aries, you just need to kind of accept that situation. I mean, it's not a situation that is perhaps ideal, but and maybe you can go beyond it. And so what you really need to try to develop is a sense of understanding. Now, it might be understanding through gritted teeth, but I think it can still be understanding. And if you can show this kind of understanding through gritted teeth, you may give the impression of being a tolerant and patient person. I don't think this is necessarily true. In fact, it probably isn't true, at least today. But you give that impression. And I think that if you do show some restraint today, I do actually think it's going to be appreciated. And people will warm to you because you're showing some restraint. And perhaps as people warm to you, they're going to start to give things away. So you kind of go with people, you follow them through, you don't try and push them. In the end, they may start opening up. In the end, you may start to get a glimpse of the truth, a glimpse of people's real feelings. And so it's a day when basically discipline, particularly emotional discipline, is going to really matter. But if you can show that discipline, I really do think that you will be rewarded. Taurus, we have the moon moving into Scorpio. So Scorpio is obviously your opposite sign. And so, with the moon in Scorpio, it is a time when Taurians perhaps have to pay some attention to other people and what other people are doing, what other people are thinking. And it may be a situation, Taurus, where other people have to be allowed to take the initiative. I mean, I don't think that people are necessarily going to be in the mood to take the initiative, and everything has to be done kind of at their pace. And that might not be entirely what you want to do, but I don't necessarily think that you have an option. And the moon, while it's in Scorpio, is making a square to Mars. It's making an opposition to Pluto. In fact, it's on the Mars-Pluto midpoint. And so that indicates that when you're with other people, when you're spending a lot of time with other people, there might be a certain sense of tension. It's just difficult to relax in other people's company, but you kind of feel that you're nonetheless obliged to. And I think that perhaps it's just a time to just watch and see what other people want, try to listen to what other people are saying. I mean, not necessarily listening just with your ears, but perhaps listening with your heart. And so perhaps in that way you can start to sort of understand what's going on. And the moon does make a trine to Saturn, and that moon trine Saturn for you, Taurus, could actually be quite useful. It may allow you to take control of the situation slowly. Once you start to understand what people want, what they're trying to express, then you're going to be in a better position to get your timing right. And actually, timing could be very important today. There is there is a wrong time to do something. If you act too early, or if you suggest things too early, things could go wrong. But if you take the time to understand, I do think that you will eventually be rewarded. And also, you do have something to offer, and you do have things to suggest, and your suggestions in the end may be exactly what people want to hear. And there is an inner dynamism to you, and at a certain stage I think you'll have a chance to release that dynamism and show people how you want things to be, and perhaps actually what's best for other people. It takes you some time to work it out, but if you think about it carefully, I think you'll realize that your ideas are the best ideas, but don't expect people to accept your ideas immediately. It just may take a little bit of time. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, from a heliocentric viewpoint, Venus is making a conjunction to Neptune. Now, with Venus conjunct Neptune, that might be, but certainly in terms of close relationships, that there's a lot going on, there's a lot of emotion flowing, but there's a certain danger with Venus conjunct Neptune that things might get misunderstood. You might misunderstand someone, particularly someone close to you. You might misread something, or it's possible that they misread you. That may be part of it. And I think with close relationships, just beware of hasty action. But Venus is not just conjunct Neptune, it's actually heliocentrically, this is getting a bit obscure, but heliocentrically Venus is on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. And so you might try to sort of push things too far, or make a suggestion too far, and that might not go down well in certain relationships. But Venus conjunct Uranus-Pluto may not just be about relationships. It may actually be about what you want to do. And the Uranus-Pluto pairing can be about wanting to create change, perhaps dramatic change. And that may be fundamentally something that Taurus wants to do. Will you get your chance today to engineer that kind of change? Perhaps not in its entirety, but maybe, Taurus, you can start the process of transformation off. It's a slow process, but I think that in the end you can start making an impact, or at least the beginnings of an impact. Gemini, I think that it's probably a day when you just feel that you can't entirely be yourself. I mean, the moon is in Scorpio, and so Scorpio is a sign that is so different from Gemini. Gemini is a sign which has a certain lightness to it. It's an air sign, but with moon in Scorpio, it's a time when things are sort of more complicated than they should be, or you feel that other people are making it more complicated than it should be. And what do you do when things are complicated? Well, when things are complicated, you should try to do things one step at a time. You don't take things too quickly. Don't go too fast. You make sure that everything is properly organized. That's how to do it. And I suppose if you're an American Gemini in the United States, I suppose Thanksgiving is often a time of organization. It depends what you do, but I mean, there are things to organize. It may not seem like a holiday, but there are perhaps things to do. You don't want to do them, but perhaps that's the easiest thing to do. And if you are trying to organize anything, Gemini, then I would have said that it may not be as easy as you would have liked. I think you might find that things aren't entirely going to plan. You may try to do something, you move in a particular direction, and it doesn't work out, or you put some effort into something, it still doesn't work out, and you might sort of reach the conclusion that you're sort of wasting your time. So if you are involved in anything organizational, then you've got to accept that things can happen. The moon is in the Via Combusta. whatever, the best laid plans of mice and men and all that kind of thing, that however hard you try to work out what's needed, you may have got it wrong. So don't assume that other people are going to act in any particular way. And just because someone appears to want something doesn't mean that in the end that is what they want. And so I suppose, Gemini, I would have said don't put yourself out on another person's behalf. If you are going to put yourself out today, then do it for yourself. And as far as other people are concerned, yeah, other people can be a pain. They can let you down, and they can say one thing and do something and then change their mind. Yeah, it can be a problem. But there is nonetheless a certain sense of excitement. There's something exciting about you. And I think that at the moment, at some level, people want a bit of excitement, and things are a little bit tense. And so you might be able to provide a different way of viewing things, which actually could be very much appreciated. Cancer, the moon is going through Scorpio for all of the day if you're in the Americas and Europe, Africa. If you're in Australia, then the last half of the day the moon is in Scorpio. Australia, New Zealand. I suppose if you're in New Zealand, the moon might not go into Scorpio until, I don't know, off the top of my head, about 1 in the afternoon. But, sooner or later, moon is in Scorpio. But so we can treat it as a moon in Scorpio day. And so from a Cancerian perspective, having the moon in Scorpio is probably not a bad thing. The moon in Scorpio, it is a water sign. It's a serious sign. A lot of people can't handle moon in Scorpio. But you, Cancer, very much can handle moon in Scorpio. It's a kind of energy that you appreciate, that you understand. When you're dealing with emotion, deep emotion, you kind of know how it's all working. You know how to bring it all together. And so you'll be familiar with whatever is going on around you emotionally, and you'll just know how to respond. And I think also, Cancer, you're going to be able to understand the underlying dynamics. And we do have to consider the underlying dynamics, because the moon, when it moves into Scorpio, it makes a square to Pluto, and then it makes a square to Mars. So with the moon squaring Mars, squaring Pluto, there is a certain tension in the air. Things are difficult, and people might be holding back on things, and there might be a certain sense of struggle, and people worrying about where things are going. Are they losing control, or perhaps they're trying to gain control? And so, Cancer, I think in any social situation, you're going to be very aware of the power dynamics. I mean, I suppose the power dynamics exist in kind of any situation. At some level, there's always someone who has more power than another, but those power dynamics, I think, as far as you're concerned, are going to be very clear today. They're going to be very obvious. Yeah, other people might not notice them, but I think you will notice them. Now, those power dynamics and the way people are positioning themselves, I suppose it could bother you a little, because it just might seem inappropriate, not something people should be doing. People should be more relaxed about it, but you can't help but notice. And, that might upset your peace of mind a little bit, but I think you just have to reassure yourself and say, well, actually, this is part of the human condition, so perhaps you shouldn't really take it to heart. Now, the moon, having made a square to Mars, square to Pluto, square to Mars, it does make a trine to Saturn, and that's particularly a feature in the Americas late in the day, moon trine Saturn. But I think all of us will in the end feel that moon trine Saturn, and that moon trine Saturn, I think, is very useful. It's stabilizing. It allows you to take control of the situation, and it also allows you to benefit from the right person's company. I mean, Saturn might represent another person, and if you've got moon trine Saturn, that suggests that you and another person can actually get on quite well. So in terms of relationships, I think the moon in Scorpio trine Saturn, it could actually be quite a good day, when you might find that you and someone else have a lot in common. There's a sense of sort of mutual respect, and in terms of power dynamics, it may be a situation where another person does have more power than you, and you perhaps recognize it, but at the same time, it doesn't bother you. Perhaps because, as far as you're concerned, that power is deserved, and at the same time, it's not a power that lasts forever. It may just be temporarily. Someone has more power than you, but I don't think it's a problem. I think actually it's a situation that you might actually be able to benefit from. Leo, I know that it can be quite a sociable day, or it's supposed to be a sociable day, particularly in the US with Thanksgiving, but I'm not convinced, Leo, that you are in a particularly sociable mood. I think that you prefer to do things your way, and certainly from a social perspective, I don't think that you're really in the mood for taking risks. That's not really what you want to do. And when I say risks, I'm particularly thinking of social risks, when you have to sort of perhaps go somewhere you've never been before, or talk to people you've never talked to before. That's not something that you are interested in. You don't see the point, and you would like things to be done your way, and you understand what is comfortable, you know what's comfortable, you want to seek what is comfortable. So given all of that, why would you want to take risks? Why would you want to put yourself out? And if that's your attitude, you could say, well, so be it. But the moon in Scorpio does make a square to Pluto and a square to Mars. So finding peace and harmony may not be as obvious as it seems. So you may feel, for example, that it's best to just, stay at home, go to places that you feel are familiar. But just because something is familiar doesn't mean that it will sort of work out entirely to plan. I mean, let's not forget, Leo, that the moon is in the Via Combustor. And when you've got the moon in the Via Combustor, things can just happen. You're not expecting them to happen. You've made your plans. You assume everything is going to work out fine. But when the moon is in the Via Combustor square Mars, just things can happen, and you hadn't planned for them, and you find it really annoying. And you might find that what you thought was going to be peaceful turns out into being something really, I won't say uncomfortable or disturbing, but just too much action, too many unexpected events, too many cases of people behaving in a way they weren't supposed to behave, and that could be quite unsettling. So what do you do about the situation? I think it's actually important to have a certain amount of flexibility and be able to move. I mean, I don't think you want to move, but it may be that by moving at short notice, by just moving like the water, just feeling the vibes, knowing that one place is getting too intense, moving to another place, and sort of having that flexibility is going to really help. But the question is, Leo, can you have that flexibility? I mean, perhaps you should be aware that the sun is in Sagittarius. The sun in Sagittarius, that's what's good about this chart. Remember yesterday we had, yesterday we had Sun trine Mars, Sun in Sagittarius, trine Mars in Leo, and that Sun trine Mars, that Sun trine Mars should be about your flexibility and you doing what feels right, and you mustn't allow yourself to be straight-jacketed by events. Give yourself some freedom. Decide what you want to do. Because if you allow anything to restrict you, then you're going to get annoyed, and I think other people are going to get annoyed. And don't necessarily think you should stay in one place, because actually that might not be a good idea. It might be just more trouble than it is worth. Virgo, moon is in Scorpio. I think that you probably have quite a lot to say for yourself. It's relatively easy for you to understand what people are saying, and I think that you're able to feed things back pretty quickly. So if things aren't entirely to your liking, I think that you will be able to communicate that. And the way you communicate will be quite intense and compelling. I mean, that is because the moon in Scorpio is making a square to Pluto, making a square to Mars, and so whatever you say, then people will listen, and that might mean Virgo, that the less you say, the better, because the fewer words that come out of your mouth, then each word has greater power. So there may be moments of silence where you just sort of contemplate, where no one has to say anything. And then when the time is right, when you feel the time is right, you can say something. And through your words, you can actually move things along. And also through your words, if you choose the right subjects, you can actually come over Virgo as being quite an exciting person, someone who is actually full of suggestions, interesting suggestions. And in terms of relationships, don't have too many expectations. Things can happen quickly, and things can happen quite unexpectedly. But if you have expectations, that might spoil things. So don't make assumptions about other people. Other people can do quite a few different things, and they may have aspects of their personality that you don't know about. Maybe you have aspects of your personality that they don't know about, and so that might create a certain sense of excitement. Now, towards the end of the day, the moon in Scorpio makes a trine to Saturn, or you start feeling this trine between moon and Saturn, and I think that the moon trine Saturn allows you, I think, to bring everything together. You perhaps observe things, you take your time, you watch, you listen, and then at a certain stage you can kind of sum it all up, and it all starts to make sense. And perhaps you've got a chaotic situation, the situation doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but you can just suddenly, not really suddenly, but in your own way, start to assert yourself, start to bring some control over things. And so, in the end, Virgo, I think you can allow things to go your way. And I think that sort of by the end of the day, you'll be the one in control. And how are you in control? The reason you're in control is because you understand, because you're making the effort to understand. You're listening, you're also talking, but you're getting that balance right. And in a way, you're able to sum things up in a way that no one can really disagree with. Libra, looking at the heliocentric chart rather than the geocentric chart, we have a conjunction between Venus and Neptune. In fact, I think that Venus-Neptune conjunction is in Pisces. So, I know we don't see that geocentrically, but heliocentrically it is very much there. And I think that heliocentric Venus-Neptune conjunction may have some impact on you. So, when we think about Venus-Neptune conjunctions, we may think to an extent about something being a little bit uncertain, you not being entirely sure where things are going and what's happening under the surface. You don't fully get it. And so, Libra, I think that you should just accept that you don't know the answers. And this is especially the case when it comes to other people. Now, I understand, Libra, that other people tend to be very important to you. You want to know about people's motivations. You want to know about the dynamics of social interaction, and perhaps you want answers. You want to know why people are doing what they're doing. But I don't think you're going to really get the answers you're looking for. I think actually, Libra, it's a day when ideally you should be living with a certain amount of ambiguity. People just don't know. You don't know. You can try to understand what motivates people, but fundamentally you will just be guessing. And so don't reach any conclusions with Venus conjunct Neptune. And even if people are behaving in a somewhat unusual way, just take it at face value. You're not going to understand what's behind the black box, and you might, for example, be tempted to overinterpret something. You regard something as being incredibly significant, when in fact it's not significant at all. And at the same time, in terms of your own feelings, particularly your own feelings in terms of relationships, don't allow your own feelings to get out of control or to move beyond the situation. And Venus conjunct Neptune can sometimes be associated with fantasy, but I think it's not necessarily a good day for having fantasies. You have to, if possible, sort of live in the world of sort of reality. I mean, that shouldn't be so difficult, should it? Because geocentrically, Venus is in Capricorn, and that's a very sensible place for Venus in Capricorn. Venus is in mutual reception to Saturn. In other words, Venus are in mixed reception. Venus is in the sign of Saturn. Saturn is in the mutual reception of Venus. So it's a time to just be as grounded as you possibly can be. I think that is the right approach. Though at the same time, Libra, don't underestimate your own desire for change. I think that in some respects, Libra, you're not entirely comfortable with the way things are. Perhaps you feel that it is time for some kind of transition, that maybe a certain situation, maybe a group of situations have had their day. As far as you're concerned, they're not actually going anywhere, and sort of radical change is soon going to be required. And I think that when you look at what is going on today, I think this will become very clear to you. Maybe this is particularly the case if you're in the United States with Thanksgiving. Holidays can be times when things become obvious. You perhaps, you see people as they really are, and you see people perhaps, then some people, maybe some of the important people in your life, you see them up close, and when you see people up close, you reach conclusions, and you reach a conclusion maybe that it is time for a change. And I'm not convinced that you can necessarily bring a change about today, but maybe actually, Libra, it's just simply an awareness of change, an awareness that just something has run its course, and maybe it's now just time to move on, or at least to make something very different. And that applies to everything, and it may also apply to relationships. Relationships have gone in a certain direction, but now something has to change. In that sense, you may feel that it's time to be quite assertive. I'm not sure that is necessarily the right thing to do, but I think you understand the importance of being assertive. And I suppose in terms of your social life, you can actually be quite dynamic, and it just may be that through your dynamic actions, you can bring about some kind of change. So it's important not to underestimate yourself, but at the same time, don't feel that any conclusions you come to today are the right conclusions, particularly if you're making conclusions about what makes other people tick, because it's just possible that you've got something wrong, and perhaps you should wait a couple of days for the dust to settle before you actually make up your mind. So it's an interesting day. It's a day when you observe lots of things, but just because you observe things, just because you feel things, doesn't necessarily mean that is the truth. It may take some time before things are completely clear. Scorpio, the moon is in your sign, and it's there all day. Well, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, the moon might not move. It doesn't move into Scorpio until perhaps late morning, early afternoon. But moon eventually gets into Scorpio. So with the moon in Scorpio, in one sense, that is good. Having a moon in Scorpio, it allows you, I think, to be yourself, to assert yourself, I think, in quite an effective way. And it also, I think, moon in Scorpio gives you a good sense of understanding. You understand what's going on. Things aren't being hidden from you. And I think on an emotional level in particular, you're not missing much. And so if you feel that people are thinking something or feeling something, you're probably right. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you should act on your feelings, but it's good to be informed, and I suppose Scorpios can inform themselves through the power of their emotions. Now, the moon does make a square to Pluto and a square to Mars today, and that moon square Mars, well, it's kind of a T square, with Mars, Mars in Leo, Pluto in Aquarius, moon on a T, and that T square means that you are, I think, very aware of the pressures around you, and you're aware of just how much pressure there actually is, and you may find it to be at first a little bit overwhelming, but then at some stage, Scorpio, you may start to realize that what appears to be pressure is simply a manifestation of your own power, perhaps. I mean, Scorpio can be a very powerful sign, particularly when the moon is in Scorpio, and the moon making a square to Mars. That moon square Mars, for most of the 12 signs, that moon square Mars could be a bit of a problem, but I don't think it's a problem for you, because Mars is in Leo, Mars is in a high profile sector of your chart. You've got moon in Scorpio. Moon square Mars means that you really know how to assert yourself, and moon also square Pluto means that through your assertion you can actually bring about some really quite dramatic changes. Things don't have to stay the same. So Scorpio, if today there's something that you don't like the look of or you're uncomfortable with, I don't think you actually have to put up with it. Through the force of your personality, you can completely change it. And other people might not like what you're doing. They might not even understand what you're doing, but it doesn't matter. You're the one who is in control. And I think, Scorpio, you don't have to necessarily announce it. You don't have to make a big deal about it. You just have to decide what you want and just go and get it. And I think in most cases, there will be little or no resistance. Now, I know that Thursday, Thanksgiving in the United States, is a holiday, but I'm not convinced, Scorpio, that you should necessarily completely surrender yourself to the holiday spirit. I think that there are things to be done of a practical sense, and that might relate to ambition, career, whatever you're trying to achieve in your life. Of course, if you're not in America, it's just a normal day, isn't it? I think. I know Canada has a Thanksgiving, but I don't think it's on the same day as the American Thanksgiving. So it's just a normal day. So with that moon square Mars, yeah, there are things to do. There are ambitions to pursue. I think actually you are ambitious, rigidly ambitious. There are things you want. And even if you're in the United States, what can you do to get what you want? Even if you're not working today, you can still do stuff, and you can still plan stuff, and you can also start to develop a sense of real ambition, something you want, and you might want it in that sort of burning Scorpio kind of way. And whatever you want, yeah, you can, provided it's realistic, you can get it. And the moon does make a trine to Saturn, and that moon trine Saturn, Scorpio, I think is I think very helpful. It allows you to take something that starts on an emotional level and turn it into reality. And so, whatever it is you want, however you want things to be organized, however you want things to be configured, you can make it happen. And you can make it happen, I think, just through sheer willpower. And it doesn't mean to say we have to have explosions, power struggles. Don't necessarily have to have it, because I think 9 times out of 10, Scorpio, you're going to be getting your way. Sagittarius, I would think that it's not really a day when you want to be doing much. I think that you're not really in the mood. I think, Sagittarius, you want a relatively quiet day, and you don't want to really be the central actor. You know, let other people take the initiative. I understand that the Sun is trine Mars, and it's still there. I mean, it's 1 degree apart. You know, Sun in Sagittarius, Mars is in Leo. I mean, that is a very motivating aspect, and it does give you a certain amount of control, and you can do things you like, you can do things you enjoy, and you can do that in your own way. You don't need anyone's help. On your own, in your own way, you can achieve a great deal, and you can just follow your heart, follow your instincts. It'll be fine. But when it actually comes to dealing with the outside world, having to deal with people and their problems and their short-term eccentricities, I'm not convinced that you can really be bothered. And I think that you may actually find that your social skills are just temporarily just not as good as they should be. You may feel that you just, when you're talking to people, you're just holding something back. You're not prepared to reveal your whole self. And I think that, I just accept that situation, and don't feel that you have to be at the center of things. I think if you are at the center of things and everyone is looking to you to make something happen, I mean, yeah, sure, you can make something happen because the Sun is trine Mars, but are you going to be doing it willingly? I think you're not going to be doing it willingly. I think this is just a time when you perhaps want to let other people play their games, let other people do what they feel is necessary, and just do what is right for you. And then I think that things should be fine. And but on your own, I think you can be very creative, and you might actually want to do things which are quite secretive. So work which is secretive, work which you don't want to tell other people about, which you want to do in a private way, or perhaps do it with people you really trust. I think that actually can work out very well for you. And indeed, your powers of concentration today are very good. So, we have got something which, in a negative sense, could make you feel quite grim, and perhaps could make it difficult for you to sort of communicate in a spontaneous way. But that same energy can also allow you to communicate. It can also allow you to concentrate and really focus. And once you concentrate and focus on something, particularly when you're on your own, you can really give it everything. And I think that your hard work and your hard particularly your mental work you could really cover a lot of ground. And in fact, it's possible today you might make some important discoveries. Capricorn, you're happy with whatever's going on today. You're comfortable. You may not be especially enthusiastic, but I think you're able to just sort of go with the flow. And I think that your social skills are probably above average, and you have a good understanding of other people. So if you're with other people, if you're socializing, if you're going to some Thanksgiving event, then you'll be fine. You'll just have an understanding of how to behave and what's expected of you. And the moon is not just in Scorpio, but it's trine Saturn. So moon trine Saturn is perhaps about you being able to control things a bit. I don't think there are going to be any surprises today. Quite unnecessary to have surprises. I think by and large you're going to be able to anticipate things, and I think that other people are going to appreciate you. They're going to understand you. I think you're going to understand and appreciate them as well. And so, I do think it's a day when relationships of all kinds should work pretty well. As I said, I don't think there's going to be any surprises. I think there's by and large going to be a high level of respect. And also, you are in your own way quite attractive and charismatic, and people notice you without you having to say anything. Your presence is clear. You come over as being an attractive and engaging person, and so it's not something that you have to try too hard with. Just be yourself, say what's on your mind, and I just think that you will be appreciated, and I just think that everything should, by and large, go to plan. So I think for you, it should be quite a good day. I'm not saying it's going to be a spectacular day, although being appreciated and people being interested in what you have to say and people being attracted to you, I mean, that's something good, isn't it? I mean, that's something to welcome. And so that means that if you're with other people in a crowd, in a group, I think that you can be, to an extent, the centre of attention. But if you don't want to be the centre of attention, I don't think you have to be. Aquarius, we have the moon moving through Scorpio, and the moon is making a square to Mars, and it's making a square to Pluto. So that moon moving through Scorpio, you may just feel that you do have a certain profile, that you do feel that you kind of have to get noticed, or you not even have to get noticed, that you will get noticed. Wherever you are, you can't help but have an impact. And I think at some level you know that it's important to have an impact. It's not a day when you want to be ignored. I mean, I think in some respects you'd like to be ignored, because you perhaps feel it's just too much effort, when you get a lot of attention. But at the same time, you kind of know that you have to be taken seriously, that people have to acknowledge your presence. And so when you start to make your presence felt, people notice. Remember, the moon is square Pluto. Pluto's now in Aquarius, and so moon square Pluto, you actually can have an impact, and you can have quite a transforming impact. Most people will appreciate it, but maybe not everyone. Moon is square Mars. Mars is in Leo, your opposite sign. Now, that moon square Mars may be suggestive of a person who you may clash with, and there may be a little bit of resentment today. Especially if you are the centre of attention, if you are getting noticed. Everyone will appreciate you except perhaps one person. Who is that one person that resents you? And it may be a passing resentment, but you're just going to be aware that just not everyone appreciates you. The vast majority of people do, but yeah, there's a couple of people, maybe just one person, who there may be just a personality clash with. Yet the moon does eventually make a trine to Saturn, and that moon trine Saturn, it's a very good aspect, and I think it certainly impacts you because Saturn is your ruler. So moon trine Saturn, Aquarius, allows you to get things together and organise things and make it clear what your idea and vision is. People will get it. And it may be that you can bring someone round to your way of thinking. Perhaps there's this person who resents you. If you feel that someone resents you, then perhaps you need to engage with them, and you need to perhaps explain things to them, and perhaps open up to them a little. Perhaps they don't know who you are, they don't know what you're thinking, they don't know what your priorities are, and a little bit of openness could actually be very useful. Remembering that, in many respects you are a charismatic person. There's something about you that is appealing, and if you present yourself in the right way, just about everyone can be perhaps susceptible to your charms, even people who might be your enemies. So today I think you've kind of got something to do. There is something that needs to be done. I think it's not a day for being shy. I think you've got something to contribute, and if there are any social problems today, then I think there is actually a way of getting over them. Pisces, we've got moon in Scorpio, which is a water sign. We've got the moon making a trine to Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces, so Saturn's in moving through your sign, and I think that moon trine Saturn could be really good. Moon in Scorpio for some people is a bit of a problem because Moon is fallen in Scorpio. But I don't think for you, I don't think you mind Moon and Scorpio being too much. Yeah, Moon and Scorpio is about powerful feelings. That is true. But you are a Pisces. You're a water sign. You can handle all of that, and so you know what's going on. I think at the same time you're going to be quite good at realizing where problems might lie. So. I'm not saying that today is 100% easy. There are going to be some hurdles, but I think you're already aware of where those hurdles are. You understand them. You understand where they might crop up. And so that means, Pisces, that you should be able to act quickly to make sure that everything is in order. And yeah, I think you're going to be able to see problems a mile off, and then you'll be able to prepare yourself for them. So that is quite useful. And also, you're not lazy today, particularly on a mental level. You do know that some things need thought and they need concentration. Other people might not be bothered to put in that thought and concentration, but you are. And so if you run into a problem today, something which requires thought, you're prepared to give it. You'll be prepared to give it everything, and you'll be prepared to really focus, give something, 100% of your effort, and you can resolve these problems. And it may take time. It may take some research. You may have to ask questions, but it's good that you can not just see a problem, understand a problem. But you're not just going to be complaining about it. You're going to be able to resolve it. So in that sense, you are a very useful person to have and have around, and you can just make things just so much easier for everyone. Of course, most importantly, you can make things easier for yourself. Though I suppose I have to point out that the Moon is making a square to Mars. Now that Moon square Mars at times might be a bit troublesome. I think the problem with that Moon square Mars is when you are in places that you don't fully understand, and perhaps you could drift off. You're somewhere. You're in a situation that you don't know the rules, and that's when the problem might start. But I think in most cases, as I've already suggested, you'll be able to see problems a mile off. But I think it's important you're in control and you're very sort of mindful, and you just, perhaps, Pisces, you should always be assuming the worst. It's a good way to be. I mean, I do think it's going to be a great day, by the way, but I just think that having a slightly pessimistic view in terms of the way you go through the day might actually be useful, because you'll have the right attitude. Because today, I don't think it's particularly easy for anyone. I mean, I am encouraging about today. I mean, there are ways in which everyone can make the most of today, but I think it is a somewhat difficult day. And yeah, for all 12 signs. And I think that you in particular perhaps are aware of that, or at least you certainly should be aware of that. And because of that awareness, you can prepare yourself, and you assume the worst. And that means that you are properly prepared. And so, in the end, you get through the day. And in the end, the Moon trine Saturn is how the day ends up. And so Moon trine Saturn is perhaps about you being able to master the various challenges that you might have to face. And that's it. Those are my forecasts for 12 signs. I was, I think, much briefer than usual. I'm sure when I do my forecast tomorrow, I will go into greater detail, but there really wasn't a lot going on today. I mean, it was quite an intense day in its own way, but in terms of the astrological aspects, there's not a great deal to report on. Anyway, let me now turn to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 64, which is before completion. So this gives us the idea that we're in the middle of something. We haven't finished. And so what are we in the middle of? Well, sort of symbolically, we're in the middle of crossing a river, and we're sort of halfway across, and we perhaps can see the far bank, but we're not there yet, and things could still go wrong. We can't, if we're swimming across this water, our feet can't touch the bottom, and so what do we do? And this perhaps represents a somewhat difficult situation when we're not entirely sure of what we should do, and we want to get to that bank, far bank, as fast as possible. And we have three moving lines here, and the bottom line moves, and this is really warning us here that, to begin with, we might feel that today we've taken something too far. We've gone too far, and it just may feel that something is starting to go wrong, and we're tempted to just go quickly. I mean, why not? Let's go quickly. Let's get to the other bank. Let's just get it over with. But to get to the other side. But I think the I Ching is warning us that that is not necessarily the right approach. If we go too far, then we might sort of get dragged down. I mean, not literally, but it's certainly not a day for literally crossing rivers. But so, can we pause halfway through? Maybe we seem to perhaps find a way of pausing and not feeling that we have to go all the way in terms of what we're trying to achieve. I know there's a sense of hurry, but if things go too quickly, things could go wrong. And then the third line moves, and the third line moves is a more optimistic line. It's still conceding that things aren't easy, but if we take a slow approach, slowly advance, we consider where we may be deficient, and perhaps if we're prepared to get some help, we should be okay. And so we can proceed, but very sort of slowly, and we mustn't overestimate our own abilities. Perhaps on our own we haven't got the capacity to get to that far bank, but with others that is possible. And then the fifth line moves, and the fifth line is a very fortunate line. I suppose the most fortunate line in the hexagram. I'm not saying we necessarily get to the far bank, but we start making real progress. And I think we have a certain amount of humility, but through our efforts, suddenly things start moving our way. And maybe it's just a reward for having the right attitude. And so things eventually move, and there is a promise there that we do actually get to the far bank. But it's not easy, and we do have to do it carefully and not overestimate ourselves, get help where required, and in that way we will be attracting good luck. And so we've got first, third, fifth line moving, and so that means once they've all moved, they all move from being broken to unbroken, and our hexagram changes, and we move to hexagram number 1, which is the creative, and it is the first hexagram in the book. So we move from the 64th hexagram, the last hexagram in the book, to the first hexagram in the book, the creative. And this is a new beginning, and this maybe suggests that having reached that far bank, having completed our task, it's new. Everything is new. We can start afresh, and we have that energy, that spark, and we can just create something new. And I'm not even going to tell you what it is, because I'm not even going to try to tell you what it is, because it is a creative. It doesn't have any form. It's just pure energy. And so you have that energy. And so really it's up to you. what do you want to happen? So once you've completed the task, which at first hexagram it was about, you then have, I think, I won't say you have a lot of choice, because I think the creative does suggest that it does have some purpose for you, but perhaps that's something that you have to work out on your own. And now I want to ramble about Neptune. I mean, if you're going to ramble about anything, you might as well ramble about Neptune. And, I've been thinking a lot about Neptune, and I suppose, part of the reason I feel I can ramble is because, this is a video for Thanksgiving, and I'm assuming that because it's a Thanksgiving video, a lot of my viewers are from the United States, and not many people are going to watch this video. So, if not many people are going to watch this video, well, I can say what I like, can't I? I just a couple of days ago, we had Neptune in Pisces, and I gave you my insights about Neptune in Pisces, and I just want to give some further insights about Neptune in Pisces, because I have been giving it a lot of thought, and in a way, I'm going to be sort of just thinking aloud, and as I said, I'm probably going to be fairly incoherent, but as I ramble, but. So Neptune's been in Pisces for some time, and it went into Pisces, the last time it went into Pisces was at the beginning of 2012, and so there it is on February the 3rd, 2012, and Neptune it's about to leave Pisces, and it leaves Pisces, I think, in March, but it does go back and go into Aries, but then you get retrogrades. It retrogrades back and forth, I think, between 2024 and 2024, and sorry, in 2025 and 2026. It's because of retrograde motion, it's getting ready for the final plunge into sort of unadulterated Aries, and so this was sort of making me think, about what is Neptune about, and how should we handle it, and what is the sign Pisces about? And when I think about a planet and what a planet means, particularly these discovered planets, it can sometimes be a little difficult. And I have a theory that if you want to understand what a planet is about, it can actually be a little useful to look at the horoscope of its discovery. And so Saturn was discovered on September the 24th, 1846 in Berlin. And so, what was actually happening when Neptune was discovered? I mean, it is interesting that at the time of Neptune's discovery, Saturn was making a conjunction to Neptune. And I mean, that that fits wonderfully. So Neptune is this rather difficult planet to pin down. It doesn't want to get pinned down. It wants to evade detection. I think Galileo actually saw Neptune, but he didn't know it was a planet. And Neptune in a sense didn't want to be discovered. And so geocentrically it got discovered when Saturn was conjunct Neptune. In a way, you could say that Saturn finally was able to pin it down, and at the time of Neptune's discovery. Also, it's interesting, but at the time of the discovery, Mars was quincunx Neptune, exactly quincunx Neptune, and so Mars quincunx Neptune, this new planet, has an uneasy relationship to Mars. How is this planet really able to assert itself? And that is a problem. And also at the same time of this discovery, Venus is conjunct Black Moon Lilith, true Black Moon Lilith. So Venus, true Black Moon Lilith, that may be a lot about what Neptune is about. It's perhaps is about relationships, but the dark side of relationships, perhaps being able to sort of understand what relationships are all about, but the sort of the darkness behind them. And so that might be might be a theme here. And I mean, I know that Pluto wasn't discovered, obviously for sort of 84 years after Saturn was discovered. In fact, so Pluto was discovered in 1930. So that means that Pluto was discovered 84 years after Neptune, which is of course a Uranus cycle, isn't it? So at that time, there you've got Saturn, Pluto, and you've got Mars on the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. So, that Mars is strong at the time of the discovery. And so Mars, Pluto may be about how we assert ourselves, and how we assert ourselves, perhaps not always in a very comfortable way. And and we've also got that Venus conjunct true black moon Lilith. So I think that does suggest, and also we're talking the moon is in Scorpio today, and the moon was at 7 degrees Scorpio. The moon was in Scorpio, fallen in Scorpio. The moon is actually the only planet in a water sign. So when it was discovered, this very emotional planet, this planet has become very emotional in terms of how people see it, but it was discovered when the moon was in Scorpio. And the moon was in Scorpio via combustor when it was fallen in Scorpio. So rather a difficult placement for the moon. And that may say something about Neptune, how we express our feelings, and often expressing our feelings in a way that isn't very constructive. Although I suppose you could say that moon is sextile Venus, so I suppose that is not so bad. Now, as far as what Neptune means, I was reminded that in 2012 I had a YouTube channel and another YouTube channel. It was just Archie Dunlop. I did make a few videos, but not many people watched them. And I did actually make a video on Neptune in Pisces. I haven't rewatched that video, but I was told, because I'd forgotten. I knew I'd made a video on Neptune in Pisces, but I'd forgotten the content. But I'd said, this is time that's going to be very religious. People are going to be more spiritual. And my first impulse was to say, well, I got that completely wrong, didn't I? I mean, really wrong. That's not really what it's about. But then I was thinking about it again. And, what does it actually mean for Neptune to be in Pisces? Pisces, of course, is a spiritual sign. And it's a sign that Pisces is a sign that is particularly associated with Christianity. The reason you might associate, at least I associate the sign Pisces with Christianity, because Pisces is a sign of the fish, and the fish does have a special association. You have when you see all these cars with their fish on the back as a sign of Christianity, because it's because the Greek for a fish is an ichthos, and so ichthos can stand for Jesus Christos Theou Uios Soter. I think that is, sorry about the pronunciation, which is Jesus Christ, Son of God, Saviour. And so there is, I think, a Christian side to it. And when you think about that, and you think about early Christianity, you think about Pisces and martyrdom, and giving oneself up for some higher cause. You think of these Christians. I don't know how many Christians really got eaten in lions in Colosseum by lions or whatever, but they had that faith that they were going to heaven, and that they were, whatever suffering and torture they had, they were going somewhere. And so that's one side of Christianity. But Christianity is a really weird thing, isn't it? Because you have all the suffering of Christians, all the suffering they had in sort of the Roman Empire, and Nero's persecution of them, and the persecutions that went on for the first few centuries. And you had the humility of Christians, and you're supposed to have complete empathy. I mean, that is what Christianity is about. That is Jesus's message: having total empathy. looking after people who are less well off than you, healing people and so forth. But then you've got the other side of Christianity. Christianity, having taken over and taken on this Christian message, is all about sort of heresy and rooting out heresy, attacking non-believers, persecutions, the Spanish Inquisition, and if anyone doesn't believe what you believe in, they're in trouble. I mean, you look at what happened to the Cathars in the Albigensian Crusade in France. I can't remember. Was that the 13th century? I think when one saint. God, was it? I can't remember. One of the saints was, he helped lead this crusade, and the Cathars in France, southern France, they had a choice. They either give in, surrender, or they accept the Roman Catholic view of the world, or they get burnt. And of course, they chose to be burnt. But that's more of the Pisces sense. And so, with Neptune in Pisces, you might say that those elements of Christianity and suffering are very much with us. At the same time, there's also the sort of persecution of anyone that doesn't follow the party line. And if you are a heretic, or if you say something that seems to be unreasonable, doesn't follow the line, then you're in trouble. And so what Saturn in Pisces is about, seems to be about, for many people, not for everyone, is about the surrender to some cause, and a belief that that cause is absolutely total, and anyone who contradicts that is in trouble. They get cancelled. They get crossed off people's lists. They may get attacked. They may get threatened, and that does seem to be very much in the nature of Neptune in Pisces. And we have these very rigid ideologies, which I think perhaps have started to develop with Neptune in Pisces. And I suppose, in my last video, I was talking about, for example, the trans activism. There's obviously nothing wrong with adults becoming trans and changing their gender and whatever, but it's taken on the nature of an ideology, and alternative viewpoints have perhaps not been tolerated, or increasingly not tolerated by perhaps a vocal minority. And you look at what's happened to J.K. Rowling, for example, even someone who is very rich and very powerful, and so she voices some ideas about maybe women should be respected as women, and men should not intrude on biological men should not intrude on women's spaces and so forth, and she gets attacked. And that seems to me to be something to do with Neptune in Pisces, because there is that dark side of Neptune in Pisces. And when we see Neptune in Pisces, maybe we should see it as an axis. So we have Neptune in Pisces, and we perhaps need to see the opposite of Neptune, the opposite sign of Pisces, which is Virgo, sort of being very critical, looking at the details of things. And so that might be one aspect of how Neptune in Pisces is concerned, and the idea of sort of heresy and blasphemy. And these are Christian concepts, or at least Judeo-Christian concepts, I think, heresy and blasphemy. And I think that we do, even though it is an increasingly unreligious society that we live in, people need religion. It doesn't matter. if however much you say you don't need God, you don't need religion, but there is that religion. So what Neptune in Pisces has perhaps done is it has answered that need for religion, and by creating certain rigid ideologies, and I think that in a way, the trans activism and the way you've had, the way this obsession perhaps with diversity, and it is seen as an article of faith. And so, you, for example, had the sort of the Jaguar advertisement, which I talked about recently, and people were condemning it, and then Jaguar was saying that were critical of these people, suggesting that the critics of their advertising campaign were sort of intolerant, and it was kind of their problem. Again, that seems to be like part of a religion. It's as if Jaguar was saying, "We have got it right." They are almost part of the communion of diversity, etc., etc. I mean, it's a dangerous position for Jaguar to be in, because Neptune is about to move into Pisces. I think Jaguar have got into something too late, and they've got into the tail end of Neptune in Pisces. And of course, I think that the whole Neptune in Pisces concept has been dealt a body blow by Trump's election. I think that, okay, Neptune is still going to be in Pisces until 2026, on and off, but I think that things have changed in that direction. But I mean, thinking about Neptune in Pisces and what I was just saying, I was also thinking about Nietzsche, and I'm not a great philosopher, and I don't really read very much about philosophy, but I did actually manage to read through some years ago Nietzsche's book on his book on the genealogy of morality. And Nietzsche said some interesting stuff. I mean, Nietzsche was he was very opposed to the whole Judeo-Christian view of the world. He regarded Judeo-Christianity as negating the human spirit, and Judeo-Christianity was all about guilt and imposing one's guilt on other people, and it's all about saying no, no, no. And he sort of contrasted his, I don't know, maybe I suppose he's talking about his Superman. I mean, I don't mean that Nietzsche didn't mean it in a racial sense either, but people have interpreted it afterwards. But the noble man, he has freedom. He does what he wants. But by contrast, he talks about a slave morality. Slave morality is about telling people what they can't do, and there's a lot of resentment. You can't do that, and we've got to be guilty. We've got to cover ourselves in sackcloth and ashes. And I think that might be a sense of what's going on with Neptune in Pisces. And you think about, for example, in America, calls for reparations against, which has been quite a recent theme, that somehow people who have been slaves need to get reparations. They should be given, I don't know, millions of dollars because a descendant had been a slave. I mean, I think that does seem to be quite a Neptune in Pisces thing, and I'm sure Nietzsche in his looking at his views and in his book on genealogy of morality would certainly have some views on that. But it's a concept where cancel. That is perhaps what cancel culture is all about. Now, it's not just about diversity. It's about other things, and I think that there are certain big causes which I think that have been picked up by which seem to me quite Neptune in Pisces, regardless of the actual morality of the situation. So, for example, the Palestinian cause. Now, I'm not making any comment about really what's going on with Gaza, but one thing we do know is that on October the 7th, On October the 7th, Israel was attacked by Hamas on October the 7th, 2023. Regardless of Israel's behavior prior to the attack, there is no doubt that Hamas attacked Israel, and over 1,000 Israelis were killed in the most barbaric way. This happened. And of course, as a result of this happening, Israel attacked back, and a large amount of Palestinians were killed, or are being killed at the moment in Gaza. But it doesn't take away from the fact that what happened on October the 7th. But this has all become part of the sort of Neptune in Pisces. I hate to say this, but there is a certain sort of mythological element to it. And I think that Neptune in Pisces, it has become a group of people have become obsessed about it, and this has become there are bad things going on all over the world, by the way, all over the world. Terrible as what has happened in Gaza is. It's not unique, but certain people have decided to make it the most important thing there is, and I think that this is completely in keeping with Neptune in Pisces. We need a cause. We need a religion. We need martyrs, and we need. I suppose. From the sort of a Nietzsche perspective on the genealogy of morality, you've got to be moral about it. You've got to care about it, and because it's Neptune in Pisces, it seems that to an extent you have to be in the right. You have to support the mythology, and the mythology, perhaps a mythological element of it would be saying, well, that Hamas were absolutely entitled to do what they did, but in fact, the killing of all those Israelis on October the 7th maybe didn't happen. Maybe it was fake news. I mean, that might be the mythology of it. And if anyone suggests that it was an unprovoked attack, then it's like every religious movement. It will attack those who are heretics, who are blasphemers. They must be cancelled. They must be struck off people's lists. This must happen because that is the times in which we live. And that doesn't take away from the fact that people in Gaza are suffering appallingly. And I'm not saying that the Israelis have behaved correctly. I'm certainly not saying that. But still, that has been the way in which it has become part of our myth. It has sort of taken on a certain, almost a religious element. And now, on October the 7th, October the 7th was traumatic, not just for the Israelis. It was traumatic for the Ukrainians. So if you look at the horoscope of Ukraine, and you look at what was happening to Ukraine on October the 7th, 2023, you can see that Saturn was opposition Ukraine's sun. And so, because Ukraine, when it declared its independence, had its sun at 0 degrees 56 Virgo, Saturn was at 1 degrees 10 Pisces. So it was a bad day for Ukraine, and so for so many people, these people who were who became so focused on Palestine before, many of them had been completely focused on Ukraine. It changed everything. It's like for some people, in terms of recognizing suffering, you could only think about suffering in one place at once. Maybe Neptune in Pisces kind of got overloaded, and so you could only think about suffering in one place, and so people started to forget about Ukraine, and they moved into sort of thinking about Palestine, and which takes us to Ukraine. Now, some people are still concerned about Ukraine. In fact, it seems that Ukraine seems to be, going back to this Neptune in Pisces, is in a way is the religion of the Western elites. The Western liberal elites, that is their religion. And again, you see a sort of the mythologizing about the Ukrainian war, that you don't see the balance. As I said, it's very rare for a war to have, for one side to be 100% right. It's very rare for that to happen. Okay, maybe even the Second World War, but by and large it doesn't happen, and there are nuances in a war. And so, things have changed. I do remember the Falklands War, when Argentina attacked and occupied the Falklands. I remember the reporting of it. This was when Britain was under pressure. Britain was under attack. Well, at least its islands were. But, everyone was very open-minded in the UK. People saw the Ukrainian perspective. Sorry. People saw the Argentine perspective. I suppose I was at university at the time. I remember I was doing a course in international law, and the teacher was. We were looking at it and looking at different views, and the military reports about what was going on in the war seemed to be fairly balanced. I mean, obviously they were from a Ministry of Defence, but they were still, there was a balance there. We knew what was going on. We knew about the setbacks that the British were having. But now this is different. Because Neptune is in Pisces, it's become more than just a war. There's no objectivity. It's just become a religion, and for liberal elites. And so liberal elites have given us a single narrative that Ukraine is entirely in the right, that Russia is losing this war. I mean, that narrative is starting to fade a bit now, but so that is a religion, and anyone that contradicts that religion is a heretic, gets cancelled, is a blasphemer. Journalists in the West have had their bank accounts closing down for reporting, independent journalists for reporting on what's going on in Ukraine, trying to give an unbiased report, and so it's become a struggle. And this is the Ukraine thing is more dangerous, because I suppose if you're talking about something that has become a religion has a kind of almost a sense of end times. And the end times, when we're starting to talk about nuclear war, it's almost like the liberal elites have taken it on to be such an important religion that they are actually prepared to consider nuclear annihilation. When there's talk, I don't think it's true, but maybe giving the Ukrainians nuclear weapons or pushing Russia to the limit. And so this is something that takes on an apocalyptic level. It could do. And so I do think that Ukraine has taken on the nature of a religion, and it's also had its own mythology. The mythology, brave Ukrainians, they're winning, which is, that mythology is being a bit undermined. And of course, as the liberal elites are seeing the mythological basis of their arguments collapsing, they're just coming up with lies, and they're becoming more and more desperate. And so again, I think that is Neptune in Pisces at work. I mean, Neptune in Pisces can work in other ways. I suppose when you look at Trump, you look at both of it. I mean, I think if you look at the election campaign, I think we saw Neptune in Pisces working on both sides of it. For Democrats, it was almost an article of faith that that Harris was going to win, and they couldn't accept anything else. Again, that is Neptune in Pisces. And you had certain polls coming out which were basically untrue. I mean, that seems to be wishful thinking. Neptune in Pisces, that you can actually change the future by changing your prediction, by having a fake prediction, perhaps. And the Republicans perhaps are guilty in their own way. I mean, look at Trump. Look at Trump. He is, Neptune in Pisces. It needs its martyr. I mean, Trump is the ultimate martyr. I mean, he has been attacked attacked through the courts. He has been martyred. I'm not saying this is the case, by the way. I'm just saying how Republicans might perceive it. He does have his martyrdom, and through the courts. That's the first aspect of his martyrdom. And the second aspect of his martyrdom is that there have been 2 attempts on his life, including him being actually shot. So he took a bullet for his country, you could say, and he stood up strong. And so again, there is perhaps even that mythology around Trump. Other things. I mean, Bitcoin. For some people who are into money, Bitcoin is a religion. I mean, you should listen to what people say about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is, okay, I know it was first, the block started in 2009 when Neptune was in Aquarius, but it's really hit the big time when Neptune was in Pisces, and it has its followers, these people who believe that Bitcoin is the future of money. Bitcoin can save us. Bitcoin can save us from debt, and Bitcoin is going to be potentially the reserve currency. So there is a religion around Bitcoin, and that's all about what Neptune in Pisces is all about. So those are some further thoughts about Neptune and Pisces. I might lose a few subscribers because of that, but maybe not many people are going to listen to this because it's Thanksgiving. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry, it was a bit chaotic and brief. I know my computer's been making a lot of noise. I'm sorry also about that. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. And if you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.